Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. This is Jim Phillips coming to you with Pro Wrestling Stories. We're here today to catch up with Bruce Tharpe, former owner of the NWA, whose roots go all the way back to championship wrestling from Florida. So, how have you been, brother? What have you been up to?
I've been doing really well. Jim Phillips, thanks for inviting me to do this interview. This is actually only the second interview that I've done in about 3 years since I've been away from the wrestling profession. But I've been devoting a lot of time to my family. As you know, Jim, I've got 2 children. I've got a daughter, Lauren, who's 13. My son, Bruce Allen, just turned 17. Jim Phillips, you know both of them very well, yourself. My son, Bruce Allen, has learned quite a few new cuss words from his uncle, Jim Phillips. But they're at a very important age in their life. So I'm very fortunate to have the time to be able to devote to them right now. I do miss the wrestling business very much. I miss hanging out with my friends, my buddies, my brothers on the road. I miss performing in the ring. I miss the fans. I do miss the travel. But at this stage of my life, I'm thankful not to have to be on the road. I mean, there was a time, Jim, when I was going to Japan quite frequently. At one time, I went to Japan twice in the same month. So with my children at this particular stage in their lives, I'm very thankful to have the time to be able to devote to them right now. I've been spending a lot of time on my law practice. I've been very busy with that, getting that developed. I've been spending time just trying to stay fit, eating healthy, and just living a good life.
So many people in the business would like to be able to have that opportunity to take the time out and spend those formative years with their children, and they don't get that opportunity. So in some ways, maybe it's a blessing, and it comes at a good time for you to take a little bit of a hiatus.
I appreciate that, and I would have to agree. I mean, they say that, you can step away from the business, but the business really does never step away from you. And what that means is it's always in your blood. So never say never. I'm away from the business right now, but it's always in my blood. I've got a passion for wrestling, and I'm hoping to one day be back involved in the business in one aspect or another.
Let's talk a little bit about the current happenings in the wrestling business right now, if you don't mind. As a former owner and promoter, what are your thoughts on the coming together of the 4 promotions, New Japan, AEW, the NWA, and Impact? Do you think them coming together to co-promote events is a possibility of a success, or do you see it being like the old Super Clash of the 80s? What's your thoughts there?
Well, I am hopeful for the future. I mean, I think it's a good opportunity for the fans, number one, because they're going to see interpromotional matches. They're going to see wrestlers from different federations against wrestlers from other groups and organizations. So it's going to be very exciting for the fans. It's going to be good for the wrestlers, number 2, because it gives the boys more places to work, which is always good, for wrestling. I am hopeful that the different promotional groups are going to be able to work together. I mean, there's a lot of personalities involved. There's a lot of egos involved. It did not work out in the 80s, but I'm hopeful for the future. It's all about television. It's all about ratings. That's how you're going to generate revenue. And I mean, from my perspective, if they're smart, they'll just let Cody Rhodes and Jericho control the booking and run with it, and I'm hopeful that the combination will be successful for the future.
I actually feel the same way. I think it's got very good possibilities if they can work it right, and it's not ego-driven the way it was in the 80s with those guys. Now, talking about the events and the fans, we saw recently that the Super Bowl has computer-generated noise, fan crowd reactions, and for all that different stuff. We're in an era where the live show may be a thing of the past. So what do you miss most about going to the live show? And do you think things will stay the way they are for an extended period of time? I personally think that a live show is integral to the business, and they need those. But I don't see it happening anytime soon. AEW has the outdoor venue that they broadcast from every week. But as far as a live house show, do you think there's going to be a new normal, or what do you think? What do you expect for the future?
Well, obviously, COVID has changed everything, and from the restaurant business to the wrestling profession. And WWE, you hear, are stepping away from live events. You know, personally, I mean, it's all going to be television driven, in my opinion. But back in the day, it was all about how many tickets you could sell, and now it's totally different. So yeah, it's going to be it's a new world. It's going to be more television oriented, more worldwide oriented, more pay-per-view oriented. So it's going to be interesting to see how things change in the future for wrestling.
Do you think that outdoor venues are the answer?
In the short term, yes. I mean, we don't know what the future holds with regard to this pandemic, whether, you know, we're going to find a cure for it or vaccine's going to work or whatnot, you know, whether that's going to allow movement back into live, you know, shows and closed arenas, WrestleMania type events and things like that. But for the short term, absolutely, outdoor venues would be, you know, a short term solution at least.
So what does the future hold for you, brother? When do you think you're going to get back in the business again?
Oh, that's a good question.
$1 million question.
$1 million question. As I mentioned, you know, wrestling will never get out of my blood. I've got a passion for it. We'll see. You know, you never say never. I'd love to get into it. You know, get back into it. You know, at one point. But you know, right now I'm pretty well focused on my family and my law business.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that at all. Nothing wrong with that. So everybody loves a good road story. Have you got any road stories that you can share with us or that you'd like to share with us?
Well, I think I've told quite a few already. I think I told the story about getting thrown out of the locker room naked in West Palm Beach, Florida. And I think I told the story about getting my jean pant leg cut off by Barry Windham, my first match. And I also told the story about the alligator story everybody's heard with Bill Alfonso and throwing the alligator in the trunk of the car and whatnot. I was there when that happened. But here's another alligator story that you may not have heard of involving Bill Alfonso that I'm sure he'll remember. But there was an awesome midget wrestler by the name of Little Tokyo. His real name was Shigeru Akabane. He's no longer with us. What a great wrestler he was. Funny guy, hilarious. Loved to travel with him. And halfway to Miami is a place called Yeehaw Junction. You know, Dusty Rhodes talked about it in his book, and you know, Rocky Johnson has been there. And it's just about halfway before you get to Miami. And they've got they've got a gas station and a little restaurant where they have these great pies. You get a nice piece of pie. But they also had an alligator farm there. And you'd pull off the side of the road, and it was basically just a little trailer, and you'd pay a little admission, you'd walk through the trailer, and back behind the trailer was this big lake. And the lake was divided by a rickety old bridge. And underneath the bridge was a chain link fence, which divided the lake into two sides. And on one side you had alligators, and on one side you had crocodiles. You didn't mix them up. And they were full. And they were big. I mean, and they were huge. And Bill Alfonso and I would get a loaf of bread, you know, before we get to Yeehaw Junction, and we'd go feed the alligators. We'd stop. We'd have, you know, this is our little stop-off point on the way to Miami. So we had Little Tokyo with us, you know. We said, hey, let's go feed the alligators. So we walk out and we get out there across this rickety bridge. We get out to the middle, and here come the alligators, you know. And we were tossing bread to the alligators. Well, we ended up, you know, getting Little Tokyo in between us. So we then started to pick up Little Tokyo and pretend like we were going to like toss him over the side. And Little Tokyo was not happy about that rib. He was like, No joke. It's no funny. No joke. God damn it. No joke. We were like picking. It was funny to us. I'm sure it wasn't funny to Little Tokyo, but that was a nice little road story involving alligators that I'm sure Bill Alfonso will remember. Bill, if you're listening to this, hello. Hope to see you real soon.
Who are some of your favorite people to travel with?
Terry Funk, in fact, was one of the greatest. In fact, I spoke with Terry Funk just yesterday on the phone. He's doing real well. Talked to him. He's in Amarillo. And hope to visit him real soon. Kevin Sullivan was somebody else that I really enjoyed traveling with. Mark Lewin, traveled with Lord Alfred Hayes, who's no longer with us. So many of the guys from the past are no longer with us. Bad Leroy Brown traveled with him. I remember traveling with J.J. Dillon, and J.J. Dillon always had his popcorn. He'd buy these big bags of popcorn from Sam's, and of course he had his rum and Coke. So we had a lot of nice, a lot of fun trips. Bobby Duncombe Sr. was a great guy. Joe LeDuc, I traveled with him. I can remember traveling with the original Sheik, Eddie Farhat, which was a trip because, this guy was scary in real life. I mean, you'd look at this guy and he had, all these gig marks on his forehead and he had these crazy looking eyes, man. And Bill Alfonso and I picked him up from the airport and would take him to different towns with us and stuff. I'd be driving the car and look over at the Sheik. He'd look over at me with that look, scare the hell out of me. I traveled with Abdullah the Butcher. A lot of the Japanese boys I traveled with because I was learning Japanese back at that time. So I would gravitate to a lot of the Japanese boys. Yatsu Muto when he was just a kid. And he would ride a bicycle in Tampa. I remember Hiro Matsuda. He was a real tough Japanese wrestler. Broke Hulk Hogan's ankle. That's a true story. So, but a lot of the legends of the business are being forgotten as we're going towards the future. A lot of the legends are being forgotten. So I credit you, Jim Phillips,
thank you
for a lot that you do. You write a lot about the legends of the past, and your writing is phenomenal. For any of you out there to get an opportunity to read any of Jim Phillips' writings, man, they're awesome. But I appreciate the time, Jim. Just wanted to thank you for the opportunity to say hello to all the fans out there, and hopefully I'll be seeing you all again real soon in some capacity.
We thank you for your time, brother, and we do hope to see you back very soon in something in the wrestling business. You're sorely missed out there, my brother.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, fans.